Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Radha Kanta Namastute Bhakta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhuveva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Humble obeisances to all the Vaishnavas assembled for this morning rally prayers, seeking the blessings of all the senior Vaishnavas, even Vaishnavis. So, we'll be discussing on the relationship between tolerance and humility. And I'll just also, because today is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has to say about tolerance, we will quite in detail go through it also. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita speaks that you're not the body, you're the spirit, soul. Where does he say in this Bhagavad Gita? Which verse? Which verse of the Bhagavad Gita does he say this? Which verse? Who would like to answer? Raise your hands. 2.13 Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara prapti dhiras tatra na muniyati. So, to realize that we are not the body, we are the spirit soul, Krishna gives the quality. What is the quality you have to develop? You have to become a dhira. Dhira. You have to become dhira. And how to become dhira? We can become dhira. That Krishna speaks in the next verse. Matra sparshas kaunteha sitoshna sukadukadam agama paino nityas tham titikshva bharatam. So how do we realize that we are not the body, we are the spirit soul? We have to become dhira. And how to become dhira? By tolerating. Tikshva. So first time, proper in the Titikshva word-to-word meaning is they just try to tolerate. Tan. Tan means all of them. And tolerate what? Matra sparshastu. Because of the contact of the senses with the sense objects. There is Sita and Ushna. Hot and cold. And there is Sukha and Dukkha. Happiness and distress or pain. So here he is mentioning these two, but also in the Bhagavad Gita it is mentioned Mana and Paman. So the soul is beyond dualities. And if you want to realize the soul, you also have to transcend the dualities. And the dualities of this material world are heat and cold. These are the dualities which affect the body. And Sukha and Dukha are the dualities which affect the mind. And Man and Apman are the dualities which affect the ego, false ego, Ahankar. Ahankar. So one has to tolerate these dualities. And only when one is able to tolerate these dualities at the physical level, at the mental level, and at the level of the ego, then when you transcend these dualities, then you can realize that you're not the body or the spirit. So, so uh, if we don't undergo this tapasya of tolerating the dualities, then we cannot attain self-realization. And the example is given, what is the fruit of tolerance? The fruit of tolerance is the purification of the heart. Just like, the example, classic traditional example is given of a leech. I don't know how many have been bitten by a leech. Those who stay in the forest have good experience about it, especially in Gokul Dham, the rainy season. Leech is a kind of insect, which is used in Ayurvedic treatment also. And Dhanvantri is holding the kalash as well as the leech in his hand, if you have seen the Dhanvantri photo. So, when you're bitten by a leech, it is extremely painful. It's extremely painful. And if you try to take the leech out, what is going to happen, Your entire skin is going to be torn out. You have to just tolerate it. You have to just tolerate it, the pain. And this tolerance is very fruitful because ultimately, what does the leech do? It purifies the blood. So, if you don't voluntarily accept this tolerance which comes because of the dualities, hmm, then you will be more miserable. Like if you try to pull the leech out and you try it, what happens? The blood will start going out of the body and it's more painful. But actually, the leech which has hooked onto you, it is purifying your blood. So by tolerance, there is purification happening. And we are here in Vrindavan. Prabhupada said that if you want to stay in Vrindavan, you have to become fireproof and waterproof. What does fireproof means? You have to tolerate the heat. And waterproof means you have to tolerate the cold. But in the summer we have ACs and in the winter we have heaters. So it's very difficult to do tapasya in Vrindavan. That's very good. In fact, when you have these equipments and when the electricity goes off, you become more miserable. Have you observed that? So I'm narrating the classic example of Yamuna Devi Dasi. When she first time came with Prabhupada along with Prabhupada disciples in 1971, I think. First time they came in Vrindavan and Yamuna Devi Dasi was Prabhupada's secretary. And they were all staying in Radha Damodar. And Yamuna Devi Dasi was serving Srila Prabhupada there. And this was their first experience of the summer heat of Vrindavan. And when the summer hit, called as the quilt, a thin cotton quilt, she dipped it in the water and she wore it. Within few minutes, it was dried. And we have experience in the summer, if you dry a cloth, within 10 minutes it's dried. Yes. Especially, the early morning, 7 o'clock, the heat begins. And till it is almost till evening, you cannot go out, especially in Praj. So in the night, she used to, she used to wear the quilt. Within 5 minutes, it used to dry. She used to go back, dip it, get it. This whole exercise she was doing whole night, just could not sleep. At last, after she decided, let me just tolerate it. You know, Understanding that I have nothing to do with this heat and cold, which is affecting my body. So that's when Prabhupada made the statement that if you want to stay in Vrindavan, you have to become fireproof and waterproof. So the dualities of this heat and cold, you know, as long as one doesn't transcend them, you know, and we are affected by it, what happens is actually your consciousness is caught up in it. Our consciousness is caught up in either heat or in the cold, and you're battling that, right? But we cannot realize that I am spirit soul. We cannot be situated in that consciousness. Similarly, sukh and dukkha. Sukh and dukkha affect the mind. These are still difficult to, transcend. And then comes man and aman. Man and apan is very, very difficult because it affects the ahankar, the ego. It's very, very difficult. And it stays in our consciousness. Whenever you see that person who has insulted us, oh, this person has insulted me. Very, very difficult. So as long as our consciousness is caught up in these cross or the mental or the subtle level at the ego, that means we cannot be conscious of that I am the spirit. So there is difference between tolerance and tapa. And we'll not bring that out now in this class because that is an entire subject altogether, different subject. Tapa is to perform voluntary austerities of the body, mind. There is the austerity of the body, austerity of the mind, and austerity of the speech, right? By which we attain this capacity to tolerate. But tolerance is when these come on their own, the dualities. So it is an internal quality which is manifested because of the external situation. I hope you are able to get this point. Whereas tapasya is an external activity which will develop the internal quality of tolerance. I hope you got this point, difference between tapa and shanti, as is a quality which is mentioned. And what is the fruit of tolerance I was mentioning? Krishna in the next verse speaks Yam hi na vatayante te purusham purushashava sama dukha sukam dhiram somrityattvaya kalpate. One who certainly tolerates these distressing situations of dualities. Ete means the dualities mentioned in the previous verse. Purusham, that person is the best of the men. Is the best. Purush Rishabha. And Sama Dukha Sukham Dhiram. He becomes Dhira. Tolerance means dhairya or patience. Sukha Dukha. He becomes equipoised with Dhamma and Dukha. And Somo Amritatva Kalpate. And he becomes eligible for liberation. Now, at the end of this class, if you forget, remind me, we'll discuss of a classic case who lost the chance of liberation just because he lost this samatvam because of sukha and dukkha. Sukha and dukkha affect the what I said? Mind, right? So if I forget, please remind me. Okay. So this is the fruit of tolerance. What is the fruit of tolerance? That you will ultimately attain amritattvaya kalpate. So it is, when these situations of dualities come, we need to tolerate it. So that is the point which Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, this tolerance is a quality of the mode of goodness, sattva. It's a quality of a Brahmana. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, when he describes the qualities of the Brahmanas, he mentions Shamodamastapat Saucham Shantirajamamevacha Jnanam Vijnanam Astikyam Brahma Karma Swabhavajam. Shama means peacefulness, that is the control of the mind. Dhamma is the control of the senses. There is difference between Shama and Dhamma. Tapa, austerity, Saucham, purity, and Shanti. Shanti is tolerance here, to tolerate. Hmm. Arjam is honesty or simplicity, and knowledge and realization. Astikyam means to have faith in the Vedas. So, by performing this quality of tapa, or tolerance, or Shanti, we develop the mode of goodness. Because that is the quality of a Brahmana. That is the quality of a Brahmana. Now, where in the Updeshamrit does Rupa Goswami mention that one has to tolerate? He uses the word tolerate. Where does he use these words? Yes, Prabhuji. What does he say? Mam prithvim sa shishya. Etan vegan yo vi saheta. Saheta means sahana. Sahana means to tolerate. And vi saheta means vishesh rupena sahet. One should specifically tolerate these 6 urges. And what does Rupa Goswami saying? If you tolerate, then you become a Dhira. So you see the connection, 2.13 and 2.15. There also Krishna said, if you want to understand that your spirit soul, you have to become Dhira. And to become Dhira, you have to tolerate. And what is the fruit of tolerance? You will attain liberation. So Dhira will become, if you sahet, if you tolerate, then you'll become a Dhira. And once you're self-controlled, then Sarvamapi Mam Prithvim Sasishya. So first one has to attain self-control over oneself. Then he can control others by his pure devotion. Just like a fighter pilot who flies a fighter plane. First, he has to, know how to run the fighter plane. He has to have full control of the fighter plane. Right? So one has to control one's own urges of the body and become self-controlled. And then when he has mastered, then he can maneuver the fighter plane and then he can attack other fighter planes, right? So similarly, when one becomes self-controlled, then he can control others by his devotion. Others also can, surrender to him and they also can attain self-control. So that's why vi saheta dhira. Saheta means one has to tolerate, he says. So what is the relation now between tolerance and humility? To the higher degree we have tolerance, to the deeper degree we have humility. So that's how the reciprocal relationship between tolerance and humility is there. And humility is also a quality of the mode of goodness. Tolerance is also the quality of mode of goodness. But one of the reasons why we cannot tolerate is because we are restless, because of the mode of passions. So the degree we can tolerate the dualities, to the deeper degree we possess humility. So that's the relationship between tolerance and humility. Okay. So now I am, because today is the appearance day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has spoken about tolerance in his article called as the Bhaktya Loka. So I'll just summarize what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has to say uh, based on tolerance. So where is in the Updeshamrit spoken about tolerance? Where has Rupa Goswami spoken about tolerance? We've all studied Updeshamrit now, right? Where is Krishna? Where is Rupa? Yes, Prabhuji.
Same first verse, like
First verse. He has spoken about controlling these urges. But where he has spoken that develop the quality of tolerance? Where has he spoken? Yes. अत्याहार प्रयासस्य प्रयस अत्याहार प्रयासस्य प्रजल्पो नियमाग्रह जनसंघश्च लौल्यं षड्भिर्भक्तिर्विनश्यति. Where is the quality of tolerance spoken in the Updeshamrit? उत्साह निश्चय धैर्य तत्तत्कर्म प्रवर्तना संग त्याग शतो वृत्ति षड्भिर्भक्तिर प्रसीदति. उत्साह निश्चय धैर्य. धैर्य is in dhairya. Dhairya means patience or tolerance. In fact. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his article on dhairya, one has to, to have patience, now you need the mood of goodness. And you require a lot of patience in spiritual life. You don't expect results to come in 1 or 2 years or 15 days. Nowadays, there are like, spiritual organizations which offer transformations overnight, right? But sadhana means, one has to perform. This body is called as the sadhaka sharira. What is it called? Sadhaka sharira. It is meant for sadhana. So we should give at least 30 to 40 years to start expecting results. When you're impatient, you want results quickly, right? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when it comes to speaking of patience, dhairya, he quotes the first verse of Updeshamrit. Dhairya means what? One has to control these 6 urges. Because when the 6 urges come, we become restless. And we have to tolerate these 6 urges. That's how, he speaks about dhairya. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that for practicing devotional service, dhairya is extremely necessary. And one who possesses this dhairya quality is only sober. He becomes restless. And one who is restless cannot do any work. In fact, to execute any work, you have to have patience. If a spiritual authority tells you some service, first you have to patiently hear what he wants the service to be done. Till now, in my last 23 years of experience, I have observed that, when I say something, a devotee to do some seva, they go quickly, run, come back quickly, and do the seva, but they would have not done that seva at all. They would have done something else. Why? What is the reason? The reason is they don't patiently and attentively hear the instruction. This is the reason. Because they are in Utsamaya stage, over enthusiasm. The mind is not, sober, calm. Utsa. Utsa is steady enthusiasm, where the mind is controlled, not Utsamaya. So, one has to be patient in order to execute work. So by Dhairya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions one can control himself first and then he can control the whole world. And then he quotes Vajo Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jivva Vegam, Udara Pastha Vegam. And each of these Vegas, he starts speaking. So he says that about, we all know we have studied in the Upanishad, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving some deeper insights. One should try to, regulate the speech. He says, if you don't regulate your speech, you will unnecessarily create enemies. You will unnecessarily create enemies. And he says, to speak uselessly is a business of a fool. And if one doesn't control this urge of speech, he will face lot of distress and waste time. And that is why Mauna Vrata is recommended. So devotees also should practice this as a sadhana to spend some time in the day not to speak and deliberate on the Shastra. It is ideally recommended that in a day, 1 hour, one should do this. Year, 1 month. That is the Kartik month. Then we can develop this quality. So to unnecessarily speak, in Hindi it is called as pak 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 pak. Especially in the train, if you're traveling, you can see, continuously they'll be speaking. Because there's no quality of tolerance. So this is what the Thakur speaks about it, and only speak topic of Krishna, and that too when it is necessary. So that's how we can control the urge to speak. He says. And then Manasa Vegam, he says that the materialistic person is driving on the chariot of the mind. And that's why his mind is always active. And even when he so the only way to tolerate the urge of the mind is not through the process what Patanjali has mentioned in the Yoga Sutras to regulate the mind. Because even that is Sakama Bhakti, he says. But the way to tolerate the mind is to fix the mind at the lotus feet of Krishna. Savayamana Krishna Padarana. That means to engage all the senses in Krishna service. That is the solution, he says. Engage the mind in hearing spiritual subjects. Now, most of the universities where I go to give talks, I ask the principal, what is the real issue the students are facing? And what is the answer they give, Everyone knows now. What is the answer they give?
Addiction to cerebral.
Addiction to cerebral. Attention span has reduced. They can't even focus for 15 minutes thanks to technology, mobile, internet, laptop. So this attention, and it's a very deadly disease now. It's a syndrome, if you're aware. And they are zombie, zombie characters. They're zombie. They're just sitting in the class, but they're somewhere else because whole night they are on the WhatsApp. So especially the devices, especially the mobile, it has a frequency of 10.2 gigahertz radiation. If you're just holding it in your right hand, and try to lift your left hand, you can't lift your left hand for your kind of information. That's the kind of energy it is sucking. But if you hold a cow dung, and then try to have the mobile and then try to lift your hand, you can lift your hand. That's the kind of energy it sucks. So I, as a principal, never get my mobile when I'm chanting or when I'm in the morning program or in the class. These are distractions. And you have all observed that when you have the mobile, even if you're sitting in the class, this is my, initially I thought, let me, when the teacher is speaking the verse, I'd like to note all the verses which are quoted. So I used to refer immediately the verse, but I used to get hooked in it and I used to lose my concentration on the speech. So then I decided not to get it because you become restless and every now and then you want to go and see. So we'll have to do certain things by which, we avoid restlessness, that restlessness which happens. And these devices are around us. So at least, this is a practical sadhana we have to do, that we have to avoid these devices for certain hours in the day. Nowadays, there is a lot of talk about spiritual detoxification, right? Detoxification, mental detoxification, digital detoxification. You know. So as a principal, from evening, say 9:30 till early morning, till at least 9 o'clock, I don't use the device. So if we don't do that, then we are going to become more and more restless. And then we'll lose that patience, dhairya. So the only way is that we have to what? Perform devotional service, attach the mind to the lotus feet of Krishna. And then evam prasanna manaso. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata. Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana Mukta Sangasha. When the mind becomes naturally joyful, then we can regulate the mind. So that is the solution for regulating the mind. Some more other tasmat kenapi upayana mana Krishna Veshayat. Some more one has to fix his mind on Krishna. So that is the solution Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives for the mind. Then anger. He says one has to compulsory restrain anger at all times. And anger arises because of unfulfilled desires. And when anger manifests, it leads to ruination. Because anger is the mode of tamaguna. It leads to destruction. So the solution what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says is that one should perform devotional service, unmotivated devotional service. If we perform devotional service with some motivation, and when that motivation is not fulfilled, what will happen? Anger arises. I perform my backup service with the motivation that I'll get the Mahaprasad, and then they don't give me. Or I hide and keep the Mahaprasad after the offering for myself. And by Krishna's arrangement, Krishna will teach us how to tolerate. And some other devotee comes and sees the Mahaprasad and he picks up and leaves. And then immediately you go and see Prasad is missing. Where is the Prasad gone? Anger will come out. Vitaraga, Bhaya, Krodha. These three things. Manmana, Mahapapashita. Bhavo Jnana, Tapasa. Puta Madbhavam. Puta Madbhavam. So one has to perform devotional service which is unmotivated, if you put anger. And interestingly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that the best way to control this urge of anger is to study the Srimad Bhagavatam narration of the Avanti Brahman. The Avanti Brahman story, he says, who became a beggar, rowdy persons who dishonor him with many insults, and then they would take a sannyas rod his water pot, begging bowl, and his chanting beads. And he had a loin cloth, Ramja, he used to cover himself. They used to steal that, And then at sometimes, when he's sitting on the bank of the river, he's just about to take his bhiksha orders offered, He used to come and pass urine. Extreme case it is. In a train, and I was carrying my hot water bottle, and somehow the opening slipped off, and the hot water fell on the seat. And the other devotees, means other people who were sitting, they became very angry, and they insulted me very badly. Just for this, Hey, Murk Pandit, samajhta nahi kya terko? And I was really affected. At that time, I studied this Avanti Bharaman story and it pacified me. So, to control anger, one has to study repeatedly the pastime of the Avanti Brahman. This is the sadhana one has to perform. Hmm? They would criticize and insult him. You're a hypocrite, you're a cheat, you're making business out of your religion because he was a businessman before, right? And that's how Bhaktivinoda Thakur narrates all these verses of the Avanti Brahman. And then, after this, the Avanti Brahman reflects, Etam dastaya parmat nishtham adhyasitam purvatme maharshibi aham tarishyami duranta param tamo mutundangri nishevaneva. So this is also the mantra a sannyasi chants when he's going to take sannyas. So if you want to cross this material existence, control this urge of tolerate this urge of anger, one has to study the repeatedly the Avanti Brahman story. And in the association of devotees, we will come across these difficult, these situations. Now, with respect to Adhyatma Klesh, you are having headache. You can't break yourself. You cannot hit yourself. And there is Adi Devi Klesh, COVID or heat or cold or too much rain or no rain. You can't do anything about it. You cannot fight with the demigods. But we think we can somehow what? Have control over the Adi Bhautik Klesh. The miseries, distress, what other living entities cause upon us. So in the association of devotees, these Adi Bhautik Kleshas Krishna arranges. And that is for the purification of our ego. And if we don't try to undergo that, then the fruit of tolerance, the fruit of purification will not happen. So that's how this mantra he chants, and that's how we can ultimately attain perfection. So he gives this example of the Paratma Nishta by serving Mukunda or controlling the urge of anger. And then Jiva Vegam. Jiva Vegam, Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that the more the tongue eats, the more it hankers. And for the pleasure of the tongue, one wanders here and there. Jivvar lalsa iti uti dhai. Shishnodar parayana Krishnanai Parayan. He's not Narayan Parayan, he is Shishnodar Parayan. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for the solution for this, he says that one has to, eat simple food. That is the solution. Eat simple food. And then for the Udar Vegam, the urge of the belly. He says by offering Krishna foods in the mode of goodness and honoring this prasad, then the tongue can be satisfied and one can practice Krishna consciousness. So this is the solution he gives for urge of the belly. And the belly, the urge of the stomach is that you should eat food for maintenance of life and mitigation of hunger. And a devotee has to develop this quality of mitabuk. Mitabuk means what? Eating only just to fill the half belly, not fully. only half. The remaining one fourth water, and you have to give remaining one fourth space for air to digest the food. In the book. And he says that one who's firmly convinced that nothing can be eaten besides Krishna Prasad are eligible to tolerate the urge of the belly. Nothing but Krishna Prasad. That means no eating outside food and then eating. So only by this he says one can tolerate the urge of the belly. And then Upasthavekam, he sees that actually in the Srimad Bhagavatam it is mentioned that the conditioned soul is always inclined towards sex, meat eating, and intoxication. These three things. These three things are prominent because in every species of life, the jiva is doing meat eating and sex and intoxication. The ants, they got intoxicated, right? One sugar ball piece, they get intoxicated and they die. So, these three activities the conditioned soul has been doing from many, many, many lifetimes. So, the material body made of flesh and blood is always inclined. And that is why the marriage ceremony is there, he says. And those who wish to become free from the codes of marriage ceremony, they are like animals, he says. And that's why he says you have to regulate this illicit sex. And the only way you can do this is by associating with sadhus. Associating with sadhus. So this is the solution Bhaktivinoda Thakur recommends for all brahmacharis, grahasthas, vanaprasthas to associate with sadhus. So that's the urge, of the genitals he speaks. And one who can subdue all these six urges, he can become dhairya, or he can become patient. He can become dhairya, he says. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that all these six sages, the Lobha, Moha, Mada, and Matsya, he says. Kama can be engaged in, being desirous that when will I go to the Bhagavatam class and hear? When will I go and take darshan? Krodha, Krishna, Dveshi, you can engage. Lobha, greed or Harikatha. Moha, when I'm in the streets, oh, I'm bereft of the darshan of the deities, and I'm in illusion like that. Mother and Matsarya cannot be engaged. So he gives all these six solutions. So only when you engage all these six favorably in Krishna service, in devotional service, then one can become idealists. That when one is impatient, one wants the results very quickly in sadhana. One of the leaders, sannyasi leaders, and their president in one country was sharing with me that in their city temple, this is in a broad country, I don't want to name, people come to the temple, they get connected, and very enthusiastically perform devotional service, and within 2-3 years, they're all missing. Because initially that enthusiasm is there, the newfound love. But after 2-3 years, they're missing. All are missing. So what is the reason? Because they want quick results. Prolonged sadhana, understanding that the results will come when one is patient. Then, to be restless, is also one of the natures of it. So that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that one has to develop dhairya, patience. practice of sadhana bhakti. So that's how Bhaktivinoda Thakur deals with this tolerance, by dhairya, by controlling the six urges. And only then we can get the fruit of tolerance. Now, I'm not going into humility now, but I've just mentioned the relationship between tolerance and humility. Tolerance comes first, and when we start tolerating, and the degree we tolerate, the humility develops. So, Krishna first speaks about humility as a vision. Vidya Vinay Sampanne Brahmani Gavihastini Sunichaiva Supakincha Pandita Samadarshina. Vidya Vinay. Vinay is humility actually. Vinay is humility. And that is why he is able to see with equal vision what? A Brahmana, a cow, a dog eater. In all the three modes, he is able to see Samadarshina. Samadarshina means he has developed the vision of the soul. The soul has its natural vision. And when self realized, he can see from the not the eyes, the physical eyes which are attracted to sense objects, but the soul's vision. And that is why he is able to see with equal vision. So this is the highest level of humility of the soul. And Krishna also speaks about the quality of humility, amanitvam, adamritvam, humility. And Prabhupada mentions humility as what? Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. Amanina, manina. Our philosophy is amanina. Now, sometimes it is seen that, we offer respects so that others also offer respects. One of the temple presidents was telling that he got a complaint from a devotee. What was the complaint? That, Prabhuji, I said one devotee Hare Krishna and he did not respond by Hare Krishna. Why did he not respond? His false ego was hurt. And I remember many years back, I was in a meeting with our Maharaj, Matri Samprat Maharaj. It was a very important meeting going on in one house which was next to the temple. And suddenly they told me to go and get one file. So I had to run back from the office to the ashram. And the ashram was on the second floor. And one devotee who rarely visits the temples, once in a year, twice in a year, that is on Janmashtami and Rath Yatra, he happened to pass by. And he actually said Hare Krishna to me. I did not really hear because my consciousness was that I have to go and get the file. So I went and then I got the file back down. And that time also he said Hare Krishna. I did not really hear. I went back to the meeting. And then the meeting went on for a long time. And the festival was going on. And after the festival was over, he came out. And from the meeting, I came out. And this time he said Hare Krishna. And I responded Hare Krishna. And then he said, come here. He said, twice I said Hare Krishna. Why did you not respond? And now you're responding. I said, when did you say this? He said, no, 2 hours before, when you were going. I said Hare Krishna. So, amanina manadena. So, amanina manadena means to, Prabhupada is saying, one should not be anxious. Prabhupada is using the term anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. So sometimes at a subtle level, we offer respect so that we get respect. So very, very deep quality. And this quality, as a sadhaka, how we should practice this. So there is, humility at the level of the body, humility at the level of intelligence, and humility at the vision of the soul. Now, This humility at the level of the soul, the vision of the soul is when one is having this quality, when one is self realized, he is seeing from the soul's vision and he can see that everyone is a spirit soul. So naturally, that humility comes in and he offers respect. That is humility, which is, which is the natural state of that, self realized soul. But humility at the level of intelligence as sadhakas one should practice. And what is that humility at the level of intelligence? That we understand that I have to become humble. You know, there is a story a sage, a sadhu tells to a disciple. He asks, "How can I become humble?" So he says, "Go and find out in the city or the village somebody more lower than yourself. Go and find out." And he's searching everywhere. And ultimately, he finds stool. He says, "The stool is lower than me." He says, "What? Stool is lower than me." So he says, "Okay, let me go and pick the stool and show it to the sadhu that there is someone lower than me." The moment he tries to start the stool, he says, "Hey, stop. You know, I was an offering to the Lord, but coming in touch with you, I have become transformed into a stool. How can you say I'm that lower than you?" The stool responds, "Oh my goodness, it's me who is more lower than this stool." And then he sees a worm in the stool. He said, "Maybe this worm is lower than me." So he said, "Let me take the worm." And then the worm speaks, "Stop. I being in this stool, I'm becoming a what? Fertilizer. You know, so it is more useful for me. So I am superior to you." Then ultimately this disciple goes back to the sadhu and tells, "There's no one more fallen than me." So when Kaviraj Goswami says, "I am lower than a worm in the stool," we cannot really fathom, Actually, he's feeling like that out of humility. It's not that he's just saying the words. He's feeling because he possesses the humility of the soul. He's feeling like that. I am worse than Jagai and Madai. Anyone who takes my name, he'll become a sinful. He's a papi person. But you know that anyone who takes the name of Kaviraj Goswami, he'll get purified. So this is, humility of the soul. So intellectually, at least one should understand and one should practice as a sadhana. Although we might have that pride like, no, I'm superior. But how one is lower than the stool, from this story, we can understand. So intellectually, one should understand. And humility comes from the word humus. Humus means earth. That means to bow down to earth. That means one should humble down. So humility of the body means to practice Vaishnava Sachar. Now we know it is very difficult our body. And what obstructs us? It is our false ego. How can I bend down? What? To become consider myself lower and bend down. It's very difficult. But one should perform this as a sadhana because the external act what we perform has the internal effect. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his article mentions, if one says I have bhakti in my heart, and there is no need to make external show of it, I have bhakti in my heart, but that is not real bhakti. He says it should manifest externally. So the external activity of offering respects to the Vaishnavas, will have the internal effect of developing the quality of humility. And when internally you have this quality of humility, then externally also it will manifest that. So that's how uh, devotees have to develop this quality, at least in our sadachar, and understanding it intellectually. Until we come to the, natural state of the soul when we develop that vision, by which naturally we are humble. So that's what I wanted to say in this short discussion. So any questions, any clarifications on this topic we have to discuss? Yes, take the mic, you have the mic.
You asked us to remind us about.
Yes, yes, yes. So yam hi na vetayante te purusham purushashava sama dukkam sukham dhiram soma amritatvaya kalpate. So sama dukkha sukham dhiram. Dhira means one who's tolerated, or one is dhairya. And sa amritatvaya, one that person can attain liberation or go back to Godhead. So the classic example of this in the Bhagavatam is of Maharaj Bharat. I was fortunate to visit last year Nepal. And in Nepal, from Muktinath, when you're coming down, the Gandaki river is flowing. And there is the place, what is the place called? Huh? Huh? Not Pulasa Ashram. There is a place, I forget the name, where Maharaj Bharat did his tapasya, on the bank of Gandaki river. In fact, it's a huge rock.
Galeshwar.
Galeshwar, yes, it's Galeshwar. And this side is the road, and this is a huge rock, and there is a river. And Maharaj Bharat was, had his cave inside this rock. You can't even go there. So no distraction, extra distraction. And he's facing the Gandaki river, and he's sitting in his meditation. And then on the other side, he sees the deer. And somehow there is a lion or a tiger, and hearing the roar, this deer becomes fearful, and suddenly it jumps and crosses the river, and actually it gives delivery of a baby deer. Just seeing this scene, Maharaj Bharat lost his mental equilibrium. He became what? Dukkha. He felt distress. And why did he feel distress? Because Maharaj Bharat was now almost he was at the stage of bhava, pure devotee. Before he was a what? King. And king has Ishwar bhav, that all living entities are my praja, and he has to take care of them. So for a moment, his mental equilibrium got disturbed. Sama, dukkha, sukham. He became dukkha, and he lost his dhairyata, and he lost his chance for liberation. So why I'm making this point is that we have to learn to tolerate dualities. And as a sadhana, we have to practice it. If Maharaj Bharat sitting on that Gandaki river, no distraction in that cave, lost his, mental equanimity, and lost that chance of liberation, then today in this, as, technology, as Kaliga is progressing, it's becoming more difficult for us to practice the sadhana of tolerance. So we have to learn to practice tolerance. That's the point. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Mataji.
Recently hearing from Canto 8 to 30, where it's talking about your gender, and Prabhupada writes in the purport that one has to be in a normal condition of life so that they're full of vitality to fight with Maya. And I'm trying to tie that in with this concept of tolerance. Do you understand?
Yes, I'm able to understand. One has to have good health, he has to have good health to perform sadhana. And if he's tolerating this, and how do you connect the both, right? Yes. So basically, as I mentioned, these qualities of tolerance, these are qualities which are in the mode of goodness. These are qualities which are in the mode of goodness. And in fact, by developing these qualities, you will come to the mode of goodness. If you are restless by overeating, then you cannot perform your sadhana. You cannot perform your sadhana properly. Because, overeating is one of the quality of mode of passion, in fact. So one has to, in his regular life, cultivate the mode of goodness quality. And for that, you will have to work out certain ways and means. Like if you're in nature, especially just being here in and around here in this campus, the birds chirping, the peacocks chirping, the morning having darshan of the cows. How many of all of you students here every day go and massage the cows? Raise your hands. Every day as a sadhana, you should do it. Because cows, just by massaging them, all the stress what you have, all the distress what you have, everything they can absorb. They have that quality. How many of us know about this? Just by offering some gold to the cows, and they lick your hand. You know what happens by that? Anyone knows? Anyone is aware? They take away your karma also. They can absorb your karma. And cow dung smell, although we might not like it, but it is a mode of goodness. That smell is in the mode of goodness. Just massaging the cows every day. So in the Lagu Bhagavatamrit, it is said, Go grasam, go pradakshanaya, go kanduyana. These three activities. Go grasam means feeding grass, and go pradakshana, doing the pradakshana of the cow, and go kanduyana, the dew lap, just go and massage. Gopal prasidati. Lord Gopal becomes pleased. Especially in today's world, the complex psychological, mental health problems, even devotees have. In the outside world, the recommendation is to go and stay where there are cow sheds. Just by going and staying there within few months, you'll be cured of the disease. That's the solution. Very deadly diseases also can get mental, especially complex mental diseases. So natural austerity, as it comes on its own account, we have to perform. The tolerance, The tapasya is, yes, we voluntarily do that. That is based on the capacity what we have. But we have to learn to tolerate these. Now, one senior devotee was mentioning the Western world, now we are speaking America, has all the comforts of the body. Yes, you name any comfort, they have all the comforts of the body. But by giving comforts to the body, what happens? The problems go to the mind. And all the complex psychological problems in the world are there. Right? So in America, every third person has a psychiatric consultant. This is statistics. And the psychiatrists have their consultant, psychiatric consultant. This is the position. So giving comforts to the body actually makes our mind more miserable. So we need to tolerate the dualities. We need to tolerate them. Because that is the fruit of tolerance, as we mentioned in this verse. Okay. Yes, Mataji.
Regulate the stomach 50%, so I've questions. And well, like this, time per day.
I'm not able to hear
How
you.
do you manage me, feel that to how can I reduce?
How do I understand whether I've taken 50%? Very important question. First of all, while taking prasad, try to take in a calm atmosphere, where there is only a Hare Krishna dhun played, ideally, or you can play some ragas. Should be very calm atmosphere. And while you're eating the prasad, avoid talking. And as you're eating, each morsel, chew it. The more number of times you chew it, actually, if you chew faster, your pitta is going to aggravate. These are one of the many subtle problems devotees have. And many Ayurvedic doctors whom I took, the devotees, they said, slow down your eating process. You're eating too fast. Prabhupada took his lunch for how many minutes? Anyone knows? 45 minutes. And that too, what? Facing the wall. He used to sit facing the wall, He used to do that, So at least 25 minutes minimum. This one has to do. And then as you eat each morsel, you get a burp. It means you have to stop. And how do you know that you're 50% full? That when you get up, you should be easily able to get up and you should feel as though you have not had anything. That's the ideal quantity one should have. It's very difficult to judge in the beginning stages. But once you have, that is enough to maintain your body and go on for next 6 hours. So that's how we should do. Overeating is one of the major problems in the world. So one has to follow this principle. And traditionally, coconut chutney, they used to make in stone grinds. They used to do in stone grinding, right? And how the stone grinding of the coconut chutney is to happen, they used to put in the coconut pulp, which is grated, and then they used to stir the rod, right? And then what they used to do? Anyone knows? While stirring, what they do?
Put some water.
Huh?
They put some little water.
They put some little water because for the moment. Otherwise, it will not crush and make chutney. Our digestion system works like that. It is circular here. So when you start, taking in prasad, first thing is you have to wash your hands and legs. Because when you wash your hands and legs, the Agni gets activated in the body. You go in the villages, first when you enter your house, they give water to wash your hands and legs. When you come to the temple also, you should do that, right? And when you start eating, the digestion begins. And generally in the food preparations, there is, sambar or dal, which is enough quantity. So we should take water either 1 hour before meal and 1 hour after, not in between. In between, if you feel the need that, it's dry, then you can take just less than half a glass of water. And then it will help in digestion. And after the meal, you should rinse the mouth at least 12 times. When you rinse the mouth, that time, what happens, there's an indication given that now the digestion can begin. And after that, you should not take in anything. What happens when you take in anything, actually the food is getting digested, but when you put in anything, the digestion stops here and it will start digesting the new food which you have put in. So this is what is one of the reasons why many people have problems with digestion. Mahaprasad has come from Jagannath Puri. Again, have it after. No. Whatever prasad comes, you take at scheduled times only. Keep it and take it at that lunchtime only, not in between. So that's how we need to regulate, and that's how we can do that. Is it okay? Yeah. Any other questions? Anyone else has? Yes, please.
Sometimes in devotees, when following etiquettes, they touch some other devotee. You are mentioning about bowing to the
Yeah, you have to bow down to the devotees.
devotee, but sometimes they touch other devotees. devotees feet.
Uh,
This is recommended in devotion.
but the question is, sometimes devotees touch other devotees' feet. Is it recommended in Shastra? No. Well, we have to offer respects to Vaishnava and we have to maintain the culture. Hmm? Then when we are offering respect to a sannyasi and we have that relationship where we have that the sannyasi allows us to touch it, then it is recommended. But in the association of devotees trying to touch each other's feet, we end up sometimes fighting with each other. And I heard in one ashram, the fight went on to such a level that one person injured his leg and he was hospitalized. So that is too artificial. That respect has to be there and that respect has to be maintained proper distance. Trying to do it just sometimes artificially, and trying to do it, it will not work. It will not work. So one has to maintain that sadachar in his dealings with Vaishnavas. Okay. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, कोटि वैष्णव जन की जय।